The last time I was on stage was in March 2020. Discovery flew me to Zambia to speak to their top performers. I was ecstatic. It was amazing in every conceivable way. What made it even better is I thought, well, since Discovery is paying for me to fly out, I'll pay for my girlfriend to fly out with me. And then while we were there, we got engaged. So I know what you're thinking. Very strategic guy, right? You're not thinking cheap, you're thinking strategic and smart. So it was this most phenomenal time, and then get back, and everything is cancelled. So the reason I tell you this is so that you know that the last time I was on stage is 20 months ago. So what can go wrong, right? That's pretty much. So in Alice in Wonderland, there's this great scene that I think perfectly captures the moment we are in at the moment. The Red Queen takes Alice by the hand, and they start sprinting through Wonderland. And at some point, after sprinting and sprinting, they come to a stop, and Alice looks around and she says, well, I believe we've been here in this exact spot the entire time. Like, we've been under this tree the entire time. And the Red Queen says to her, well, of course, how would you have it? And Alice says to her, well, typically, in my country, if you run very fast for a very long time, you would get somewhere else. And the Red Queen says to her, well, that's a slow sort of country. Because here, you see, it takes all the running you can do just to keep in the same place. That is known as the Red Queen effect, or the Red Queen game. It says that the world is moving so fast that you need to do everything you can just to keep up with the pace of change. That the environment changes and you have to change. The competitors make a move and you have to make a move. We see this everywhere. Once you become aware of this Red Queen game, this Red Queen effect, you'll see it in every aspect of your life. One of the easiest places to see it is in the social media space. Snapchat came out. They launched short-form video content. Soon, Instagram had stories, LinkedIn had stories, Twitter had stories, Facebook had stories. TikTok came out. Meme-driven, music-driven content. Wasn't long for Instagram to have Reels, for YouTube to launch Shorts. Clubhouse came out. Live audio broadcasting. Twitter launched Rooms, Facebook launched Rooms, and Spotify has launched their version called Green Room. The environment changes, and you have to change. A competitor makes a move, and you have to make a move. This rapidly changing world that we are experiencing and that we are moving into, I think is best described by Geoffrey West, a theoretical physicist, who said that rather than being bored to death, our actual challenge is to avoid anxiety attacks, psychotic breakdowns, heart attacks, and strokes resulting from being accelerated to death. Have you experienced this over the past year? This acceleration? I know I have. And what makes it even more difficult is that we are being accelerated in 5 different dimensions. That the nature of the world is changing. This is largely due to technology, but we are also seeing an increase in social movements. We are seeing that constructs like gender is being redefined. We are seeing the nature of work changing. It's more collaborative. Teams are more important than ever before. The nature of the workforce is changing. For the first time, you have to lead generation X, Y, and Z in the same team. Your people want more purpose from you. The nature of the workplace is changing. We used to work in cubicles, then the open office, then you get to work from home, now you get to work from anywhere. And finally, the nature of choice itself is changing. That employees have more options than ever before, so do employers, and so do consumers. Ray Kurzweil, one of the most well-known futurists, have said that what makes this so breathtaking, this change, is that we have this convergence of multiple high-impact technologies at the same time. So you have things like blockchain and AI and neural networks, and all of these technologies on their own have the ability to completely disrupt what is happening in the world. But when they converge, the change becomes exponential. I think we've all seen graphs like this. it shows you the impact of technology on economic productivity. It's showing you the changes coming our way. When I looked at this, I thought, there really is a tsunami of change heading our way. And it's going to be overwhelming in every sense of the word. Overwhelming in terms of the change we have to deal with, overwhelming in terms of the consequences, both intended and unintended, and overwhelming in terms of the new technologies that we have to learn to use. I'm sure you've seen this many times. Yuval Noah Harari, who's written about the past and the future extensively, says that as we go on, every 7 to 10 years, the change that you will experience is going to be so drastic that you will have to completely retool and reskill yourself. And not only will these revolutions every 7 years or so become bigger and bigger, they'll become faster and faster. And so what that means for me is that we're going to take the last year of acceleration we had, we're going to put it on repeat, we're going to speed it up, and then we're going to turn up the volume. That is where we are heading. So, what does this mean for you? Well, firstly, it means that you should really care about this rate of change. If you are someone who wants to be of value in a business or be of value in your own business, then you will have to be the one that retool and reskills the quickest. Because if you don't, you'll be a part of what Yuval calls the useless class. People who they don't have the ability to add value because they don't have the skill. It's tough to hear, but it's a harsh reality. What does this mean for you? It means that if you are standing still, if you aren't keeping up with the pace of change, if you're not changing how you think and how you do things, then you are falling behind. And that disadvantage accumulates. Because while you are standing still, the world is accelerating ahead of you. While you are standing still, your competitors are moving ahead. And so standing still is exactly the same as moving backwards. So the question that I want us to sit with then tonight, as we think about this rapidly accelerating future that we're having to deal with, is how can we survive and succeed in playing the Red Queen game? Even more importantly, how can we position ourselves for success? And as you can imagine, what it all comes down to is this one word, and that word is adaptability. So adaptability is a skill that's near and dear to my heart. It's cultivating this skill that I believe has helped me to go from being a physiotherapist in 2007 when I graduated to founding Better Man, which was South Africa's largest self-development community for men, to the work that I do today, which is modernizing leaders and teams through speaking, through coaching, and through workshops. So what is adaptability? Well, the dictionary actually has some nice language around this. The dictionary says that adaptability is the quality of being able to adjust to a new position, the capacity to be modified for a new use or purpose. I love that we all have the capacity to be modified. Esther Perel, world-renowned psychologist, said that adaptability is that inner conversation that you have between stability and change, between your need for security and adventure. Many people think that adaptability is this passive trait that some have and some don't have. But really, if you can take one thing away from tonight, it's that adaptability is a skill. It's a skill that any of you can learn and apply in any situation that matters. And I believe that it has 3 components, and we'll touch on that in just a moment. Keep in mind that adaptability happens at 2 different levels. At the one level, we're adapting to our environment. This is COVID hitting, this is us doing remote work. Many times, this is the kind of adaptation that's imposed upon you. But there's a second way of adapting, and that is adapting to an ideal. This is you saying, I want to be a better remote leader. I want to be more assertive. I want to be more confident. You set the ideal. You have something to strive for, and you have to change how you do things in order to get there. Whether you are adapting to COVID, to the rise of our robot overlords, or to an ideal, the premise is exactly the same. You have to reconfigure how you think, how you feel, and how you act. And the moment we start doing that, we start running into a few challenges. And the very first challenge is that many of you won't actually care about this future that I just described. Many of you will listen to what I said tonight. You'll think it's quite interesting that the future is coming at us at this alarming rate, and then you'll go home, and instead of thinking about adaptability, you'll go and watch some more Squid Games. If you've ever tried to convince a smoker that they should not smoke because of something that may or may not happen in the future, then you know how futile this approach can be, where we try and say, this is what's going to happen, and therefore you have to change today. By the way, I think many smokers might, after seeing this slide, hope that I really hurry up so they can go outside and smoke, right? All you vapors, I know it. It's a very strategic slide. So, it's not just smokers. I'm not just picking on you. It's really anyone who's ever said, listen, I'll get to it on Monday, I'll get to it at some other points in the future. We are very good at putting off the things that might hurt us, right? That's why change can be so difficult, because if it doesn't hurt us today, we'll just put it off until it does. So pain is an extremely potent catalyst. Of course, so is creating a vision, but I wanted to just focus on the pain aspect for tonight, because I think what we can do with adaptability is we can say, let's not get too hung up about the vision for the future, about what may or may not happen in the future. Let's instead focus on the skill that you can cultivate. And this skill actually has application for you today. It's going to help you be better in the things that you care about today. And as you practice that, applying it into the present, it's going to help you hone that skill for the future. So I think adaptability is a great way of exploiting what you are doing right now in the moment. It has benefit for you today. The second challenge that you'll encounter is that we have this adaptability paradox. So I fundamentally and deeply believe that people are good at changing. I didn't used to believe it, but today, I guess as a coach, I have to believe it. But I really sincerely do believe that people are good at changing. And maybe over the years, you've heard people say countless times that you aren't good at changing, right? It's a lie. If I look at my life, I've adapted pretty well, transitioning different careers. It didn't take me long to change my leaving the house ritual, that when I leave the house, I look for my car keys, my wallet, and my cell phone. Now when I leave, I look for my car keys, my wallet, my cell phone, and my mask. Sometimes my car keys, my wallet, my mask, and my wife, depending on where I'm going. Just joking, love. Over the course of your life, you've adapted to many things. You've maybe moved cities. You've worked in different organizations. You've worked in different positions in those organizations. Maybe you got married. Maybe you got divorced. Maybe you had kids. Maybe you adopted a dog. Your life has constantly shifted, and you have shifted with it. You are good at changing, at least to varying degrees. Think of when you get a new cell phone. Initially, that cell phone it's shiny, it's new, you take care of it, you put it down very slowly, you have a protector on it, you want to show people it, and then a few weeks later, what happens? It just becomes a natural part of your life. You just toss it onto the couch, you don't really care about it. Why? Because you've adapted to it. It's called hedonic adaptation. In fact, I think you are so good at adapting that sometimes you adapt to toxic environments and to destructive relationships. That you get into it initially and you think, I don't want to be here, but it doesn't take you long to go from, I don't want to be here to, oh, this is just the way it is. If we push this to an extreme, in 1973, Jan Olsson enters a bank in Stockholm, Sweden. He pulls out a machine gun, he fires a couple of shots into the air, and then he takes a few hostages. Of course, if you're robbing a bank and you have hostages, there's always going to be a demands list. So his demands list was $700,000 in cash, a convict friend of his to be released, who then joins him, by the way, in the heist. And can you guess the third thing that every bank heist needs? A getaway car, of course. So this lasts then for a few days, and eventually they tear gas them and they arrest him. And the strangest thing happens. His hostages, 4 of them, don't want to give him up. As he's detained, they are screaming, they are crying as they put him in a car and they drive him away. And people looking from the outside don't understand what's happening here. They are baffled. Later on, psychiatrists would call this Stockholm Syndrome. When you develop a deep relationship with your captors, they call it an adaptive trait. In fact, one of the hostages said that I find it very natural that you would adapt yourself to identify with your kidnappers. So then you're going, well, Erik, if we are so good at changing, then why do we so often still fail at changing? And here's the paradox, is that while you're very good at changing, you are also very good at resisting change. And you are good at resisting change because change isn't just this external thing that's happening. There's something happening internally as well that we often don't pay attention to. William Bridges noticed this, and he said, what's happening is that there are 2 things occurring at the same time. You have external change, which is the things that we can observe that are changing in the environment, and then you have an internal change, and he called that a transition. And every transition has 3 stages. So the very first stage is that you have to say goodbye. You have to deal with an ending. The stage is called the ending. And as you can imagine, that gives you a clue as to why it could be hard, because we don't like saying goodbye to things. We don't like losing things. And what you are losing in the process isn't just some physical thing. It's a part of who you are. I've been saying this since the start of the pandemic, that when people left the office, they didn't just leave the office, they were leaving behind who they were at the office. That a large part of your identity is informed by how you get dressed up in the morning for work, the commute, where you sit at work, the title that you have, the people that you hang out with, what you do during your day. All of that informs a large part of who you are. And so when we went from working in the office to working from home, you weren't just leaving behind a building, you were leaving behind a part of who you were. So what does the ending give us? Or what do we need from it? We need to acknowledge that the ending is happening, and we need to ritualize it. And actually, people are quite good at this. We are quite good at signposting the ending, symbolizing it in some way. Think of this. What is a bachelor's party? It is us ritualizing the ending of someone's single life. And then I recently heard there's also a thing called a divorce party. And that is ritualizing the fact that someone is leaving behind their married life, right? So we are actually good at showing, here's an ending, and we need to move on. Once we start moving through this ending, while we are dealing with it, we get into the wilderness. So the wilderness is this time of great uncertainty and wandering. We're recalibrating who we are. If you've ever met someone who came out of a long-term relationship, and they're in this weird sort of funk, and you ask them, are you going to start dating again? You'll get a very stereotypical answer that actually shows you they're in the wilderness. They are saying, I can't date right now, I'm just busy finding myself. Why do they say that? Because they've had to say goodbye to a part of who they were. So now I have to figure out who I am, having said goodbye to this previous identity. As a self-identified high performer, as someone who coaches high performers, when I learned about this and I started thinking about it, I thought, how can I accelerate this? This takes too much time. How can I shortcut this process for myself and for my clients? And I realized that I was being the biggest idiot thinking like that. Because actually, this is not a process that you want to rush at all. Because each stage gives you something that you need. What do you get in the ending? You get closure. What do you get in the wilderness? Well, there's this promise that when everything is uncertain, anything is possible. And personally, I don't think it's a good idea to rush this reconfiguration that's happening inside of you. But once we've spent enough time in the wilderness, once we've explored, once we've gone down different paths and see what works and what doesn't work, we finally get to the stage where we enter the new beginning. And when you're in the new beginning, there's clarity about where you want to go. You have conviction, you have determination, you know who you want to be and where you are heading. So that is the paradox of adaptability, is that on the one hand, you are really, really good at changing. At the other hand, you have to go through this entire transition every single time, and having to say goodbye to things is hard. The last challenge that I think many people face is that increasingly we are engaging in pseudo-learning, in pseudo-adaptation. We are living in a world where there's just so much content, right? I mean, you have podcasts to get through, then you have to get through your Twitter threads, because that's like a big thing these days. Then you go onto Instagram and there are all these carousels that are educating you. Then you go onto YouTube. Then you're on LinkedIn and you're reading all these status updates. Plus there are videos to watch. Plus there's also videos to watch on Facebook. It's never ending. And so what happens is that because we have this barrage of content coming our way, we end up doing something that I call thinking in glances. This is when you glance at these potentially life-changing ideas, and then you just carry on again with your life. And you think in that moment that learning has happened, but it hasn't. Real learning only occurs when it changes how you think, when it changes how you do things. What happens is we get the dopamine hit, the experience of learning, but it doesn't happen. I'll give you the perfect example. A few months ago, my wife and I decided that we want to have signature dishes when people come to visit us for like dinner or whatever. And as it turns out, she has all the signature dishes and I have none. And that is because she's a phenomenal cook and I am not. So we thought, well, what could I own? What could be my signature dish? And the thing that we decided on was that I would do low and slow barbecue. So this is where you take like ribs or brisket and you put it onto a Weber for 6 to 8 hours. It's very, very difficult. So I thought, well, this is the perfect thing for me to do because I've been watching all of these barbecue shows now for how long on Netflix. So I already have some grasp of it, right? And then I thought, but I won't stop there. I'm going to really upskill myself, and I'm going to watch a couple of YouTube videos. And the great thing is we get to learn from the best. So I watched all these phenomenal pitmasters, how they do their rubs, how they like light their fires and keep it running. And I think I watched about 8 or 10 videos in rapid succession. It's like, Matrix, like downloading the information into your brain. And I thought, okay, I'm ready. I'm like, let me go and do this brisket. So I go to the butcher, and I get there, and he says, cool, here's your brisket. Do you want the fat on or off? And I'm like, I'm not quite sure. Let's just leave it on. And I get home, and I watch a video, and it says, no, the fat should be off. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I get to the seasoning of it. I'm like, I couldn't remember. It's like, is it a dry rub or a wet rub? Like, what is the combination of spices? What temperature should my fire be? What should the internal temp of this brisket be again? And that is pseudo-learning in action. You feel like you have this skill, but you don't. And this is happening more and more frequently. And the stakes are higher and higher. I thought that would get a better laugh. Like while I was rehearsing this, I thought, should I put this in or not? And I thought, no, people are going to laugh because they'll catch the stakes thing. Okay, obviously that has to come out of the talk then. But the reality is that the worst thing that can happen to you is that you think learning has happened, but it hasn't. That you think you have a skill, but you don't. That you think you're prepared for the future, but you aren't. So these 3 challenges that I've highlighted to you is by no means exhaustive, but these are the things that I see all the time, and these are the things that I tend to have to overcome myself all the time. So the question then is, well, okay, cool. We know about these challenges. How do we then become highly adaptive individuals? And I thought I'd just use this little model to guide the conversation for us. So the very first thing that you need is to cultivate the right attitude. And specifically what I'm speaking about here is your willingness to try new things and your openness that you have towards change. Natalie Fratto is a venture capitalist. And when she's working with a new founder, the one thing that she's always looking for is how adaptable are they? So she's not, well, initially, she's not that interested in IQ, how smart they are. She's not that interested in EQ, how emotionally connected they are to themselves and to others. Mainly, she's looking for AQ, adaptability quotient. How adaptable are they? And she has 3 things that she's looking for when she's meeting a founder. The first is that she asks them a lot of what-if questions. What if your business tanks tomorrow? What if there's a new competitor that comes onto the market? What if there's a new technology that disrupts your business? And by asking these questions, she gets them to think beyond the solution they've created, to think about worst-case scenarios, to see how flexible they are cognitively. Secondly, is that she's looking for signs of unlearning. I was really hoping to get through this talk without saying that word, unlearning, but I couldn't get away from it because she said it. So she's looking for signs of unlearning, and what this means is that she's looking for moments where people have taken old information and overridden it with new information. So this could be something big, right? It could be you changing religions. It could be you changing operating systems. So going from Apple to Android, which is like changing your religion as well. It could be that you were a very transactional leader and now you're a very transformational leader. Essentially, the template is, I used to do it like this, now I do it like this. Congratulations, you're an unlearner. And the third thing that she looks for is for people who are infusing exploration into their lives and into their businesses. There's a very tricky balance that we have to navigate, and that is the balance between exploitation and exploration. Exploitation is that in the moment, there are certain things that are working for you, and you want to double down on that. That only makes sense, that you exploit your current business model, that you push it to its limit. But if you only do that and you don't infuse exploration, what that means is that your current success might be the biggest thing that prevents you from success in the future. I've developed my own little test for exploration. I call it the what the hell test. And it's when you look at change that is happening around you and you go, what the hell? Like, I don't get it. And the unknown tends to really elicit that response for us. So the very first time that I became acutely aware of this is earlier in this year when I saw this. So this is an NFT. Well, it's a picture of a picture that's an NFT. For those of you who don't know, NFT is a non-fungible token. And the reason I went, what the hell, is because this sold for $69 million in March this year. And I went, I don't get it. And then a few months later, these ether rocks appeared on the market. And again, I was like, what the hell? I don't get it. One of these sold for $1.3 million, 400 ether. And I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get what's happening. And maybe you're experiencing that too. Maybe you're looking at TikTok and you're going, what the hell is TikTok? I don't get it. Or what the hell is the metaverse? I don't get it. What the hell is an NFT and why are rocks selling for millions of dollars? I don't get it. I realized that I'd fallen into a trap. That I was looking at these things happening, these what the hell moments. I was looking at that and I would say, what the hell, I just don't get it. It doesn't apply to me, it's absurd. And then I would just categorize it to the side and just move on again with my life. It doesn't apply to me, like I can leave it to the side for now. And then a few weeks later, no, not a few weeks, a few days later, there would be a notification on my screen that says, listen, pay attention, the future is happening, and I would just go, nope, not now. And I realized that I can't live my life like that, because what I'm doing is I'm fully immersed in exploiting what is working, but I'm not exploring the new. So I decided that my first step to go and explore the new would be to go buy an NFT. And I want to tell you a little bit about that process. But before we get to that, I want to show you my NFT. So this is the NFT that I bought. It's called the Spirit Sphinx. That's its official name. My brother calls it the ugliest thing that he's ever seen. I bought it for 0.05 Ether. So at the time, that was about 2,800 Rand. Yeah, that's mine. So if anyone wants to make an offer, yeah, I'll be around afterwards. So let me tell you a bit about the process. Actually, before we do that, if I gave you 5 minutes to go and order something on Takealot right now, how many of you think you'll be able to do that? Yeah? If I gave you 5 minutes to go and buy an NFT, how many of you think you'll be able to do that? All right. So I'm by no means a crypto expert. This is just me trying to retell the experience that I had, right? So here's how it goes. The first thing you need is you need to get a MetaMask wallet. So this wallet essentially allows you to store cryptocurrency. Obviously, you need to get cryptocurrency into that wallet. So what you do is you use a service like Wire or Transact. They swipe your credit card, and they will then convert your rands into Ethereum. Any currency really, but Ethereum is the one that many of these NFT marketplaces use. Then you need to find an NFT marketplace. There are many. The biggest one in the world is called OpenSea. Currently, they are valued at $1.5 billion. So then you need to connect your MetaMask wallet to OpenSea. So it's like this little digital contract that you're signing that connects the wallet to OpenSea. It's like this entire thing. And then once you're on there, you have to find an NFT to buy. And there are thousands and thousands, because everyone is hoping that they might just put a rock on that sells for $1 million. But the trick is that NFTs have different levels of utility, that there's a different level of rarity to it. So some of them are connected to communities, some of them are part of collections, and you have to find the one that actually really has value, or that might have value in the future. Some of them give you access to, for example, to like communities and airdrops and merch, etc. So anyway, once you find your NFT, you have to buy it. And it's pretty much the same thing. You click the buy button. Sometimes it's a bidding process, but some of them you can just buy outright. And the moment you do that, you are hit with a new fee that you didn't know about before. So you need to go refill your wallet again, and that's called a gas fee. And the gas fee is, simply put, like a shipping fee in a way. It's for the transaction to happen on the blockchain. I'm sure many crypto guys are like screeching when they hear me explain this, but at least that's how I understand this. And once you've done that, once you've gone through this entire process, there's no like big congratulations screen, there's no instant hit of dopamine, like you just like, what now? And then you realize, oh, your NFT is sitting in your wallet. And then that's it. So as you can see, I bought a second one, Canine Cartel, and actually I got a third one. So this one comes from a digital pet collection, and the creator, to thank everyone who bought early, airdropped me a little kitten that looks a little bit different to that. Anyway, here's the here's the biggest thing that I gained from this process. It's not the NFT. The biggest thing that I've gained is that after a few hours of researching and dabbling in this, I now better understand something that was completely foreign to me. Now I understand gas fees and gas wars and NFT communities, and I've been on Discord servers. It's starting to make more sense to me why Lamborghini dropped NFTs, why Louis Vuitton and Burberry and many, many other brands are moving into the NFT space, why Visa recently paid $150,000 for this CryptoPunk. I'm starting to understand it a bit better. When they spoke to the crypto expert at Visa and they said to them, why? Why pay $150,000 for this image? I think his answer is very telling. He said, first and foremost, we wanted to learn. That is what it means to have an openness to change, to explore the unknown. You embracing a change that feels foreign to you, that feels alien, that makes no sense, might be the biggest difference between you being a part of the future or observing it from the sidelines. The next component is ultra learning. I just like that word a lot. It comes from Scott Young's book by the same name. If we are going to be adaptable, we have to be very specific about how we spend our time. Eduardo Brinceno has this incredible TED Talk where he says that most of us spend our time in one of two zones. That you are either spending your time in the performance zone or in the learning zone. So in the performance zone, the goal is to perform, is to be your best, is to minimize mistakes. It's game time. In the learning zone, your goal is improvement. It's fine to embrace mistakes. We are looking for feedback. Now, you might already be seeing the problem here. Where do we spend almost all of our time? In the performance zone. It makes sense to me. I get it. We spend all of our time in the performance zone because it feels good. It feels productive. But more than that, that's what pays your salary. That's what gets your business to move forward. The performance zone is often very much tied to the money that we create. So what ends up happening is that we wake up in the morning, we switch into performance zone mode, and we stay in that the entire day. And then in between, we layer in this little bit of learning, right? Listening to a podcast while doing something else. I'm quickly watching a video while doing something else. I'm quickly reading a status update and then getting back to work. Thinking in glances. Why? Because you are prioritizing performance. You're not prioritizing learning. When I speak to my clients, they often say to me, I feel guilty for being in the learning zone because it means I'm not being productive. I'm not with my team. And the thing is, the future doesn't care how you feel. It just cares whether you are adapting or not. And if you want to be highly adaptable, you need to spend time in the learning zone. So once you've committed to being in the learning zone, what you do there matters. Your learning should have two qualities to it. The first is that it should be directed. It should help you to solve a problem. And the second is that it should be effective. It should actually change how you think and how you do things. And one of the best ways to do that for yourself is to create a plan for learning. A plan for learning is a curriculum created by you, fueled by your curiosity, and high in utility. So what do I mean? I mean, you have to ask yourself 3 questions. The first question is, what do I need to learn? And maybe the easiest answer here is, where are you failing the what the hell test? Like, what is the skill that you need to learn? Do you need to be a better remote leader? Are you trying to be more assertive? Are you trying to learn more about Web3? You need to give direction to your learning. Secondly, is that you want to figure out how you're going to learn it. again, we have access to the best minds pretty much for free via podcasts and videos and blog posts. So I think this is actually a fun part of the process, is that you get to sit back and curate your own curriculum, combining all of these different ways of learning. And then once you've done that, you obviously want to time frame it. You want to say that for the next month, I'm really investing in learning in this one specific direction. Because otherwise, our learning tends to be quite random. It's like whatever's put in front of us, that's what we tend to learn more about. When you have a plan for learning, you are saying, I'm committing to this direction of learning for the next month or the next quarter or whatever it may be. The last component then is that obviously what you are learning, your openness to change, all of these things have to come together in how you do things. That's the most important. Otherwise, you're going to be standing in front of the barbecue not knowing what to do. Like you haven't actually learned a thing. You haven't adapted in any kind of way. Jonathan Haidt, in his book, The Happiness Hypothesis, and then later Dan and Chip Heath in their book, Switch, spoke about the fact that we can liken change to a rider on an elephant trying to get to a destination. The rider is your logical thinking part of your brain. The elephant is the emotional side of you. It's unruly, it's big, it's temperamental. And the path is the environment. And so the job for the rider is that he needs to keep the elephant moving in the right direction for as long as possible. And we already know why that can be quite difficult, right? Because we are emotional creatures. We have to deal with internal change. But I wanted to focus in on the rider for a little bit. Because the rider deeply dislikes uncertainty. At least some uncertainty. Like, I think we're quick to say all uncertainty is bad, but you wouldn't want me to give you the end to Squid Games, right, if you're still watching it. Like, you still want to have a bit of suspense. You want that unknown. You might be the kind of person who wakes up on your birthday and you look forward to surprises. You want to not know what's going to happen in the day. So some uncertainty is actually a good thing. And if you think about it, when life becomes monotonous and boring, what do we crave? We crave some excitement, some risk. What is that? That's uncertainty. So how we can formulate that is that uncertainty plus a positive expectation that things will be okay, I'm not in any real harm here, means that I'm excited. But when we start pushing that uncertainty a little bit further and it becomes very murky, I'm not quite sure about the outcome, then it turns into anxiety. So what Chip and Dan Heath says is that one way we can combat this ambiguity, this uncertainty, to give the riders a bit of peace of mind, is that we have to script the critical moves. We have to figure out what the next step is going to look like. Because there's so much uncertainty outside, the last thing you need is uncertainty on the inside. Like, you need to control what you can control. In 1921, the R-14, a submarine, goes out on a search and rescue mission. And along the way, they run out of fuel and they lose all radio communications. So not the most successful search and rescue mission. While they're stuck there, they ask this question. They say, well, what now? What are we going to do? And they could have sat around and just deliberated all day long, thinking about the next step, maybe this, maybe that. But instead, the lieutenant scripted the critical moves. They decided on a course of action, even if it's just initially. And he said, let's go grab all the hammocks and string them together, and we construct a mast. We hang it as a sail, right? And they do that, and the submarine starts moving forward a little bit. And seeing that, he's like, well, let's go grab some more blankets, we'll weave them together as well, we'll hang it up as another sail. They do that, they get a little bit more movement. Seeing that, they're like, well, since this is working, let's go grab another sail. They grab a third sail, they hang it up, and they start moving forward even more. I think they probably ran out of blankets at this point because there weren't any more sails constructed. But what happens is over the next 64 hours, their batteries actually recharge. And a few days later, they enter the harbor on battery power. And I love this because it shows you how you turn a submarine into a sailboat by simply scripting the critical moves, by simply putting a line in the sand and saying, this is what we are doing, and we'll figure out the rest as we go along. But we'll create certainty, at least, about our next step. And I can tell you that in coaching, one of the questions you ask the most is, what does it look like? Because we are quick to commit to change, but it's broad and it's sweeping and it means nothing. If you say that I want to be more assertive or I want to be more confident, what does that mean? What does that look like? We need to script the critical move. We need to figure out exactly what the next step is going to be. So that then completes our model for us. What's important to know is that when you fail in any of these, it lowers your level of adaptability. If you have a failure in attitude, so you're not open and willing to change, then what it means is that, yes, you are learning at a rapid pace maybe, you are executing on that, but you are most likely just sticking to what is comfortable to you. Not that that's bad, by the way. It's like me working on being a better keynote speaker or being a better coach. It's not bad, it's just not pushing me into the unknown, into things I haven't experienced before. If you have a failure in learning, it means that you have this openness to change, and you just jump in and you start taking action. You're an early adopter. Again, it's not a bad thing, but it could be because perhaps you're not competent enough. Perhaps you haven't taken the time just to upskill yourself a little bit more, learn a little bit more, so that when you take action, at least it's a bit more focused and directed. And of course, you could have a failure in executing on what you are learning. And in that case, you are thinking in glances. You are the smartest person, but it means nothing. So the sweet spot is when we can combine all three of these. When we can cultivate an openness to change, when we can be effective in our learning, and when we are generous in taking action. I want to leave you with one final story. In 1975, a group of researchers started what would turn out to be a 12-year-long study on how people adapt to change. They were studying this in a company called Illinois Bell Telephone. And Illinois Bell Telephone was a subsidiary of AT&T, and AT&T had the privilege of being a government-regulated monopoly at the time. But there was quite a bit of pressure mounting for the telecoms industry to be deregulated. And about 6 years into the study, this happened. AT&T had to divest all of its member companies, and they had to compete in the open market. And what followed was carnage. Illinois Bell Telephone went from having 26,000 employees in 1981 to 14,000 in 1982. They shed almost half their workforce, 12,000 jobs in 1 year. Can you imagine what that must have felt like? It's at this point that things also became quite interesting for the researchers, because they clearly saw two groups of people emerging. 2/3 of people that they observed really struggled with change. It became too much for them. They suffered depression, burnout. At worst, there were suicides. But 1/3 of people did really well. They formed new relationships. They made some very successful career moves. And the researchers ended up dubbing them the adaptive third. And you know what the one thing is that set them apart from the people who didn't adapt well, according to these researchers? That one thing was courage. We have to have courage to face the onslaught of challenges, of misfortunes, the non-linearity of life. Our courage shows up every day in how we make decisions. Are you choosing the past, or are you choosing the future? And when you choose the future, you have to know that you are also choosing uncertainty. You are choosing the unknown. You are choosing danger. You are choosing the possibility that you might fail. In fact, they did a study where they hooked people up to electrodes, and they told the one group, listen, we are definitely going to give you a shock. And they told the other group, it's like 50-50. We might shock you, we may not shock you. The group that was told, you are going to be shocked, were less stressed. Why? Because they had certainty. At least they knew they were going to be shocked. That's how badly we want certainty, even if we know like, it's going to be painful. So when you choose a future that is unknown, that is uncertain, that is full of danger, that is a courageous thing to do. And so, as you leave here tonight, I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to take heart. And in the car, as you're driving home, I want you to choose the future. I want you to be courageous enough to choose the future. And I want you to also know that you have exactly what it takes to be adaptable, to thrive in that future, that you have all the tools you need in order to beat the Red Queen at her own game. So thank you very much, and good luck. Thank you.